Fiona. You're listening to Wednesdays on the Record. The Space Brain Sci-Fi Film Festival is back for another year, showing off some of the amazing talent in our state. It's a competition that started last year for independent science filmmakers, particularly focusing on the work of regional filmmakers to help give them a platform to speak about their projects. To tell us more about the festival, we're joined by Mark Regan, co-director. Thank you so much for joining us on the record this morning.
Thanks, Fiona, for having me.
So this is the second year of the Space Brain Sci-Fi Film Festival. Can you tell us how did it all first come about last year?
So my business partner and I, Surrey, we created Space Brains as a podcast just over 5 years ago. And so now we've collectively done 101 podcast episodes, which we focus on science fiction film. And about 3 years ago, so a couple of years into the podcast, we kind of thought, well, where can we grow this? The podcast is doing well. And so we actually kind of sat down and thought, well, we investigate feature films, science fiction on the big screen on the podcast. Well, why don't we try to look at like local filmmakers and short science fiction film and how can we give them a platform to, you know, see their films on the big screen. So that's sort of where it became birthed out of.
I love that it came from your passion of sci-fi films to giving local content creators and directors their own platform to share their products.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, all the big Hollywood films, they have those marketing budgets and they can kind of get their films shown on the big screen. And so we just kind of wanted to like look as local as possible. The festival does have categories we have the Mandurah and regional category, and then we have like an Australian category, and we do include an international film category as well. The great thing is last year and this year is showing very similar numbers. Last year we had 55 films submitted, and it was a pretty even split of Australian and international over those 55.
Oh, wow.
And this year again we've repeated that. So I think we had 52 entered this year, and again it's about 50% is Australian and the other 50 is international. So we're really happy with that. We're proud of that, and we're really keen to show those Australian and local films on the big screen to hopefully a really keen audience.
And WA is not something you'd connect or think about when it comes to sci-fi. Do we have a big science fiction scene here?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's interesting that question because I've been asked it a couple of times over the years when I do say we do this podcast. And yeah, like I'm a filmmaker myself, and so once you kind of get into that scene, you do realise that, oh, no, there is sci-fi filmmakers locally. And in fact, I went to a feature film premiere on Saturday night at Luna, which was Radio Man, and that's a science fiction feature film totally made here in WA, local filmmaker called Brad Newland. It will have screenings in the future, so if your audience want to keep an eye out, it's kind of like a comedy sci-fi, so it's really a lot of fun, high-energy film. But if you go back a couple of years ago, we had that really big blockbuster that's available on Netflix called I Am Mother by Grant Spatore, and he's a West Australian filmmaker. That starred Hilary Swank, had a $15 million budget, and that's available on the streaming platforms now. So, yeah, there is a science fiction element, I think, in WA.
So tell us about this year's festival. What is involved in this year's Sci-Fi Film Festival?
So we've morphed it a little bit from last year, but similar sort of idea, which is we have some community workshops during the day, and then we have the actual film festival component. So this year we're running, for Space Brains, we're running a 2-hour podcast episode, and then, workshop, not episode. And then we're running a 2-hour science fiction writing workshop with Stephen Dedman. He's a local award-winning published science fiction author. And then following that, we have the actual film festival component. So during that component, we're going to have Luke Spark. He's an Australian science fiction filmmaker behind the Occupation series, which are, again, available on streaming platforms. And he's going to be doing sort of like a bit of a keynote presentation on being a filmmaker, what it's like to be a sci-fi filmmaker in Australia. And then after that follows about 13, 14 of the best short science fiction films, and then a bit of a fun award ceremony where we hand out the awards for the best films in the festival.
So why is it important for you to include workshops and talks as well as the actual film competition side?
Well, we, again, like as I said, we want to give the platform of the nice big screen of the films, but we also want to sort of inspire that next generation of filmmakers, writers, and anyone that's interested in being part of like a cast and crew. And I mean, as a local filmmaker, it's always great to have those opportunities. So if you can go and learn from people that are, a couple of steps ahead of you in your creative career, that's really great. So like, as I mentioned, Luke Spark, he's making big feature films now. His film he's just finished had Sam Neill and the American actor Barry Pepper, and that was shot on the Gold Coast. So he's kind of a few steps ahead in his filmmaker career than someone like myself who sort of makes short films. So I feel like that's what we want to gift back to the community in Mandurah, and anyone that wants to come to the festival, they have that opportunity to sort of maybe see someone that's a couple of steps ahead of them and feel, the belief that they can also, follow in their dreams or their goals for their creative careers.
You're listening to On The Record. We're joined by Mark Regan and we're chatting about the Space Brain's Sci-Fi Film Festival. Can you give us a sneak peek into some of this year's entering films?
Well, I thought what was interesting when we went through the 50 films, there's quite a bit on artificial intelligence. And so maybe that's something that, as a community, we're a bit concerned about. I think especially creatives. I know a lot of illustrators and designers are kind of concerned about that whole, auto-generated imagery that is popping out there. And recently, you might have noticed in the film world as well, there's a Wes Anderson Star Wars AI creation that you can check out on YouTube, which has been totally made by AI. So I think as creatives, it's something that's probably is a bit concerning. So there was quite a few short films that delve into the AI as a main theme. And so that was really interesting. But similar to last year, we have a collection where, AI, you've got the kind of time travel concept again. You've got the socio aspects of relationships with robots. And also just sort of bizarre concepts in the future, worlds that are quite different to our own. So, if you really want to ignite your imagination, that's probably the great thing about sci-fi. And when you watch lots of little short sci-fi, you can see how these filmmakers are kind of just delving into those different themes that, as humanity, we are a bit concerned about, I think.
I can imagine it'd be quite difficult for you and your co-director trying to pick out your favourites for the film festival.
It is. It's a very difficult process. Like, it's enjoyable because, I like films, so it's very interesting to see what people do. And the ones that get submitted, it is such a wide variety of not only the subject matter, but also quality. We have a couple in there that probably had quite large budgets, maybe, 10, 20, up to $50,000 budgets. And then you have other ones where someone's just shot it, whilst they're at school, high school students with no budget. So it's a real wide variety of films. So it's quite exciting. But out of the sort of 50, you probably really would love to be able to play, maybe 30 to 40 of them. But you've got to be very tough and really come down to, what is the best 15 or so films, because, that's all the time we sort of have,
This festival also focuses on regional filmmakers. Why is it important to provide platforms such as this to regional talent?
Well, there's not a lot out there. We look at the big cities and, there is more opportunities in the big cities, not only for getting together with other filmmakers, networking, opportunities through funding agencies. So like here in WA, Screen West is the big government funding agency. So they put on a lot of events in Perth and they don't tend to branch too far out of there. There is a couple, like Cinefest is a great festival in Busselton, and Albany now. It's grown to Albany. So, but there's not a lot of other opportunities. And also being a filmmaker myself in regional WA, so based in Mandurah, you realise it does feel isolating at times and you need to try to find your other people. So that's something that I've done. I've created a group in Mandurah that we try to get together a few times a year. I also try to connect people in Mandurah online, so that, you don't feel so isolated as a creative. So the festival, again, was sort of born on that idea that, okay, yeah, we can celebrate the international films, but we also need to get the locals, let's get them interested and give them a platform to come together and celebrate film and sci-fi.
This morning we've been talking all about this amazing festival called the Space Brain Sci-Fi Film Festival. But before we let you go, for those who is keen for this year's event, what do you hope they take away at the end of the night once they leave the cinema or the workshops?
Well, I think with the films that they have a really good time. They enjoy it. Obviously, some of the films, like we said, the themes, they might, think about AI and think about, where should we go with Chat GPT and artificial intelligence. But hopefully they just have a really great time that way. If they're coming because they are a young filmmaker or they're, interested in writing or creating their own stories, there's an opportunity for them to network with other filmmakers. As I said, we've got Luke Spark in the room. If you're an actor, you might want to jump in front of him and, connect to him on Instagram, and maybe you can be in his next film. So that sort of is our main goal of the night, to bring the community together and network and have a good time.
Well, thank you so much for joining me on the record this morning and telling us all about this new Sci-Fi Film Festival.
Thanks, Fiona. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was co-director Mark Regan telling us all about the Space Brain Sci-Fi Film Festival, which showcased some of the best science fiction talent in our state, but also from our country. If you do want to find out more, you can head to filmfestival.spacebrains.com.au.